So AOC took Chuck Todd to school over the issue of centrism. So she's going to describe what the American people are looking for, and Chuck Todd perfectly reflects DC conventional wisdom. And remember, this is what Chuck Todd believes is not even close to true, and she's going to burst that bubble very quickly. Watch.
Somebody who had an interesting perspective on sort of this issue of the larger issue of the Democratic Party, Senator Claire McCaskill. Mm-hmm. She lost from a red state. And she was critiquing, not you personally, but I think some people thought she was attacking you personally, but basically saying, hey, it is easy to be a Democratic socialist in a blue district like yours. Mm-hmm. It is hard to say that same thing and get a Democrat elected in Missouri. So how do you square that with the ability of finding a governing majority?
Well, I square it, first of all, I square it with the direct evidence in 2016 that that is not true. And no matter how you feel about Senator Bernie Sanders, he ran in 2016 as a Democratic socialist.
Unapologetically.
Unapologetically, and he won every county in West Virginia. And he won Michigan.
Primaries.
In primaries,
I mean, these are among Democrats. I mean, no, I know that. But that's the point. Among Democrats is one thing, but those independents, right? Those. And
he wins independents. He wins independents. That's the thing. It's because people have this mistaken idea that American politics is on one linear line between left and right. 40% of the American public identifies as independents, and that doesn't mean we're in the middle. Right. That means we hate this thing.
Mm-hmm. Finally, somebody said it in a power center. Okay, this is what I've been screaming on this show for years. The entire conceptualization of politics that elites have is totally wrong. Now, I don't know if they're misleading people on purpose or if they actually believe it. I tend to think they actually believe it, and they drank the Kool-Aid on this. But here's the way the argument goes. Well, listen, the country is like a center-right country. So in order for Democrats to win, they have to reach out to the right. And, you know, hey, it's all fine and dandy in a far left district like AOC's to run somebody who's actually on the left, but the fact of the matter is, you gotta run centrists, you gotta run even conservative Democrats in more conservative districts. So, I mean, it is what it is. What are we gonna do? That's just the hardcore reality on the ground, and there's no getting around it. So when a guy like Rahm Emanuel steps up and says, let's basically run Joe Manchin types throughout half the country, we gotta do what we gotta do. So, I mean, listen, we had to put a Democrat front and center who's going to disagree with us on 60% of the issues, which is how often Joe Manchin agrees with Trump. Is 60% of the time he does. That's insane. But that's the argument. The argument is, what are we going to do? It's a hardcore political reality, and that's exactly what Chuck Todd is expressing here through Claire McCaskill, who said the same thing. Now, by the way, he said it up front to get the criticism out of the way, or else AOC would have called him out on that too. Chuck Todd goes, yeah, she lost. Okay, wait a second. Pause and reflect on that. She lost an election, and she's telling everybody how Democrats can win elections. That's almost like going to Charles Manson for morality advice. Like, you're like the perfect example of who not to listen to. That's like going to Hillary Clinton and saying, tell us how to win elections. She keeps losing. Why would you ask her? Whatever she says, do the opposite. Do the opposite of that. This is just basic logic. Now, furthermore, you know who else has been one of the faces of this, going around on all the different shows and giving his opinion on this? Joe Donnelly. Joe Donnelly was a Democratic senator from Indiana. He lost. Why did he lose? Go watch his ads. His ads were, I'm more right-wing than this Republican who's running against me. He literally, bragged about agreeing with Ronald Reagan, said he's not against the wall, and slammed Medicare for All in his ad. Wow! It turns out when you tell your own base that they're fucking stupid, they don't show out for you. They're so dumb. Okay, now, look at what AOC said in response. Perfect answer. She goes, wait, so you're telling me we need centrism and more conservative Democrats in order to win in the Midwest? Well, how do you respond to the direct empirical evidence that Bernie Sanders won the Midwest in 2016? That directly contradicts your shitty fucking narrative. Can you fucking acknowledge that, please? And they won't. They won't. They're just going to keep plowing forward as if AOC did not fact-check them. And every show will do it. I just saw Nate Silver tweet about it the other day, and he's not even the worst offender on this front, but sometimes he's bad. And, you know, the argument is, and you're going to hear this a lot moving forward, oh, ideally, sure, we want a left-wing candidate, but honestly, it's more about electability. Oh, electability. Oh. You're just assuming that more electable means further right-wing, means more centrist. That's what you're assuming. The data shows the opposite. If anything, there's a better argument that the further left you go, the more electable you become. But they're just going to say it, and just a lazy assumption is, oh, that means more right-wing is better. We're about to see. We'll see who does better. Cloud Boot Jar or Bernie. I wonder who's going to do better in the 2020 race. Okay, now, she says, Bernie won the Midwest. What are you talking about? Then he goes, okay, yeah. By the way, did not at all absorb her point, understand it. He didn't get it. He just fucking brushed that shit right off his shoulder and said, but independence. That's what this is about, independence, isn't it? And AOC immediately claps back with, Bernie wins independent. That's what all the polls show. There is no debate here, guys. There's no debate. And actually, the picture is even better than AOC lets on here. Now, she does a great job, and she's right in everything she said. But there's one point that goes a step further that would totally blow up their brains. You know what that is? Bernie also won self-described conservative Democrats. Bro, how is that possible? Because, and people point this out, and they're correct to point this out. I don't get it. Bernie Sanders is literally further to the left than Hillary Clinton in 2016. It's not even close. He was the furthest left candidate available. So how could a candidate who's furthest left get more of the vote from Democrats who self-describe as further right? There's only one explanation for it, and it makes perfect sense. People don't know about labels. They don't know about labels. So there could be, somebody could say, hey, yeah, I think I'm a pretty conservative guy. But then when they hear Bernie say, well, shouldn't we take our tax dollars and put it towards healthcare for everybody like every other developed nation? Well, yeah, I think so. Shouldn't we have a living wage in this country so if you work full-time, you make enough money to survive? Yeah, I think so. I think that makes sense. Hey, shouldn't we have free college and just treat college like it's high school and catch up to the rest of the developed world and make it so people don't have over $1 trillion in student loan debt? Yeah, I like that idea. Hey, shouldn't we regulate the criminals on Wall Street who crashed the economy and got away with it and ran out the back door with taxpayer money? Yeah, I think that makes sense too. Hey, shouldn't we legalize marijuana because people are getting locked up for slightly changing their consciousness and it's not really that much different than having a sip of beer, having a couple beers at the bar with your buddy on a Friday night? Yeah, I like that idea too. So this is what happens, people. So, I'm pretty conservative. He just described every left-wing position and you agreed with it. So people don't know labels. By the way, we're going to get to a story on this later. There's a guy named Tim Pool who was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he reiterated this same point. So, well, hey, there's a new Pew Research poll, and to be fair to him, there is a new Pew Research poll. I'm trying to find it. Here it is right here. When they asked Democrats, 53% of Democrats said, we want more moderate people in our party, and only 40% said more liberal. Now, ignore the fact that they don't get the distinction between liberal and leftist like extremely online people do. What they mean by more liberal is more leftist. But put that aside for a second. What's the problem with this poll? The same as what I just described to you before. People don't know labels. People will say, I'm really conservative. Do I agree with free college? Yeah. Do I agree with Medicare for all? Yeah. Do I want to end the wars? Yeah. Do I want to legalize marijuana? Yeah. Do I want to regulate Wall Street? Yeah. So people think they know what labels, they don't know what labels are. They just, I don't know, that sounds better, I'm more conservative. So when people are going around now and saying, oh, the Democrats need to move in a more conservative direction, are you fucking kidding me? That's comical. The Democrats of today are like the Republicans in fucking 1980 on the actual policy issues. They are, for Wall Street deregulation. They're for endless war with the Republicans. So that's a bullshit narrative. But it's wonderful to finally see somebody go into their bubble and burst it and say, listen, you guys just have a fundamental misunderstanding. When somebody says they're an independent, that doesn't mean, oh, I'm permanently waffling 50-50 between the parties. No, there's a lot of people who are independents like me. I ideally would be an independent if I wasn't living in New York where I had to be registered as a Democrat to vote in the Democratic primaries. But does that mean, there's a 50-50 chance Kyle will vote for a Republican or a Democrat? The fuck are we kidding? What a joke. No, most independents are either left independents or a smaller percentage of them are right independents. But again, when you go to the actual policy issues, the American people agree with a guy like Bernie Sanders, agree with the philosophy like social democracy. So Chuck Todd's understanding of politics is honestly stuck at an elementary school level. Like, he doesn't get it. He doesn't get it. And I guarantee you they will keep reiterating the same tired old point. Why don't you just run people like who are more conservative, more centrist to win? So obviously candidates like Claire McCaskill who lost, and Joe Donnelly who lost, and Hillary Clinton who lost. That's really the argument. All these people who just lost and who've had an iron grip on the Democratic Party for all these years, why not let them run the party? Because they've been running it and they've been losing endlessly. So, so happy AOC burst that bubble. And I guarantee you they will not absorb that point and course correct. Because they can't. They're totally invested in this incorrect idea. And maybe it's for nefarious reasons. Maybe it's because they're part of this machine. Corporations rely on shitty right-wing Democrats to keep deregulating for them and keep giving them tax cuts. So I don't know. Maybe that's a little bit too conspiratorial of a belief, but the reality is, even though she's 100% right, this will not be digested and then regurgitated by other people in mainstream media. They're going to still insist you need more corporate right-wingers who are not popular at all in order to win in the Democratic Party.